Fans of Mutant Chronicles Warzone and resin science fiction miniatures, thank you very much for joining me for a model, build and touch of tactics review of the capital Martian Banshees Linebreakers from the Mutant Chronicles Warzone Resurrection by Primaris Games. So here we have some models I bought a couple of months back at Salute. It's been kind of like sat in my to-dos. The opportunity presented itself, and it's also an opportune moment to review these for reasons that will become apparent as we move through this review. This is a kit of 5 multi-part resin miniatures. They come with separate bases and you get them in this rather neat and stout box. So they are very well packaged. As long as they leave the factory in good condition, they're not going to incur any damage in transit. There's a rigid cardboard box in here with foam packing, and then the parts are bagged up as well. So the kit presentation was excellent. When I bought these at Salute, so it was at a game show, they cost me £11 for the 5 models, which I consider an absolute bargain for resin miniatures. I don't know if they do different price rates for shows to what they sell online. So if you go online, these cost £13.99 for 5 models. I'd say, you know, slightly below average in terms of cost if you look at some of the other science fiction resin manufacturers. Probably a bit cheaper than, say, Anvil, although the models don't have as many parts, and they are definitely cheaper than Forge World. Let's have a look then, and we'll start with this dude. The reason I bought these was, firstly, they were an absolute bargain at 11 quid for 5. A long time ago, I did actually play some Warzone, and I was a big fan of the early books. You know, this is the original edition. And I had a small force of, oh gosh, what did I have? It was a bit of a mess. I had some Bauhaus. I might have had a Reside kicking around at some point. And I also had a few capital Martian Banshees. Now, the original miniature range was a bit hit and miss as to what got released, and it was even harder to get hold of. So when I saw these at the show, I thought, oh yes, Martian Banshees, yes please. I guess firstly a note on the model style. You can see looking at these look pretty realistically proportioned, and they are. And I would say these are true human proportions. These are advertised as 32mm miniatures. And sometimes it's a bit difficult to make sense of different manufacturers' size criteria. But the Martian Linebreakers are armed with this Ripper sword type device here, and a short-barreled automatic pistol, which is humorously called a bolter pistol. There's a couple of real signature points of the Banshees. Firstly is the fact that they have this jetpack and these jump boots. These are jump infantry, and these particular ones are equipped with the close assault role. And then they also have these masks on as well, these rictus masks. And they actually, in the game, they do actually serve as a terror effect. It's actually called Death Shriek, and basically they can emit a terrifying howl out of these masks, and hence the Banshee name. And the Martian Banshee concept goes way back to, oh gosh, well, what was it, in the mid to late 90s when Warzone was around originally? A very old trooper in the Warzone game. It's just been re-imaged. Well, Primaris Games have done a great job here. The detail on these guys is really good, as I'm sure you can see. I mean, one thing that really strikes me about these is they do break the mould, and they are, as I say, realistically proportioned. These are very much like the Aliens versus Predator models in terms of the style. They are true human proportions. The weapons are of a believable size. You know, the hands, you know, you can see the hands and the arms are of a realistic human size. And the detail on these is, there you go. I mean, it is really good. Some very fine surface detailing, both on the armour, and then you've got the equipment pouches, ammunition pouches, you've got stun grenades, you've got all sorts. And they've got this heavily armoured body shell with the backpack mounted on the rear. So let's have a look at another model. Whoops, I dropped him, span him over. So you can see the torso armour a bit more clearly on this trooper. Again, they've got these great rictus masks. Posing on them is very dynamic. I mean, some of the miniatures in range have a more, shall I say, static or normal or less mobile stance. Static's maybe not the word. But these guys, they've really gone for it with the mobile poses to represent the fact that they are fast moving and they do have the jump jets. I mean, the first miniature we looked at, this guy, he looks a bit like he's just landed after jump flight. Let's have a look at some more. Again, it's unusual in science fiction miniatures to go with this sort of realistic style proportion. Most manufacturers choose to go for something along the lines of heroic miniatures, and clearly, you know, that's a trend that has been set by Games Workshop over the years, but Prodos have really broken the mould, no pun intended, and created something new with this re-imaging of Warzone. I've always liked the Martian Banshees. They were somewhat more comic, shall we say, perhaps in the original game, but these are much more serious looking, and the original masks were almost a little bit Japanese style, but these are completely rictus. Well, clearly look like a human skull. One more miniature to look at and then we'll talk about the build. This one's the most upright of the group, so this one gives the truest indication of what one of their 32mm miniatures look like. And these are the same scale as the Aliens vs Predator range. Right, so that's the 5 models. So what were these like to build? Well, these were an absolute doddle to assemble. I made these in an evening. They were very easy to put together. There were some fairly thin mould seams. Occasionally on things like arms, they tended only to be at one end of the arm. I didn't have any cleanup to do on any of the weapons, so casting overall was really excellent. There were some slightly larger mould seams and even the odd mould slip, particularly on the inside of the legs of a couple of miniatures, but it's pretty easy to deal with. And the fact that they've got clothing on as well made it easy to blend those in, and that always helps. So yeah, but overall casting quality was excellent, and I've been pleasantly surprised with these as my first miniatures from Prodos. Prodos have got their own particular blend of resin that they use for making these models, and it's quite intriguing. Compared to other resins I've worked with, and you know, Forge World, Victoria Miniatures, Anvil and Warlord Games, all of them, everyone's got their own particular brand. Now these are something a little bit different. Again, it's hard like resin, however it's quite easy to cut with a knife and easier to cut than other resins I've worked with, even Forge World resin, which is one of the softer ones, and it's quite intriguing how they get the hardness and yet it's easy to work with. It's almost like it's foam. I'm not sure what the process behind it is or the composition behind it is, but it was an easy material to work with. As you've seen from looking at the models, it certainly produces excellent detail. Each model has inside its arms, because the arms are separate from the torsos and then separate bases, the body comes as one piece, legs, torso and head. There's a letter to indicate each arm and inside each arm socket to tell you which arms go with which bodies. I've built them as I was supplied because you get 5 unique models. I guess you could switch and swap those around if you wanted to. It was very easy to identify torso A and arms A to go with it, again due to that very sharp casting quality on the miniatures. Build, construction, dead easy. In terms of mounting them, I think they're cut-off gates on the feet. I've used them as mounting posts and I drilled the base out to mount them in. If you wanted to, you could cut them off and then just stick them straight on, but what I've done is stronger. Quite a useful way to get a good attachment onto the base. I built these in an evening, and having recently built the Primaris Space Marines, which took an absolute age to clean up, these were a refreshing change. There was no warping. I did a little bit of heat bending to repose some ever so slightly. You probably can't tell too much. I mean, this guy, I just extended his arm out with the pistol he's holding to make him look more like he's actually shooting his pistol, because his elbow was a bit too down and it looked like if he was about to shoot his gun, get smacked in the head by the pistol from the recoil. He wasn't braced very well, so I tweaked him a little bit. And there you go, you can see it on the packet. So yeah, I just changed that a little bit. Nice thin arms, they're dead easy to heat up and repose should you wish to do so. So that's it on the build. Hassle-free, pleasure to do. Did them in less than an evening. So yeah, really good. Okay, let's do some quick size comparisons. These are the only Warzone miniatures I have from past or present, so I haven't got any other comparators, so I'm going to use some stuff from my Games Workshop collection, and mainly Forge World as usual. So first let's do something of a light flight comparison. Here we have a Velataris Trooper from the Solar Auxilia, and if we take this guy here, so interesting. These guys are in similar stances, I would say, and they are probably about the same height. This guy's maybe a little bit taller. But look at the difference in bulk. Now, okay, this guy is in a vacuum suit, so he is bulky, but you can still see the difference between what this, which is kind of like a human scale, and this, which is what you would typically call a heroic scale model. But yeah, they're pretty much the same height. This guy's obviously a lot bulkier. Interesting comparison on the detail front. Velitaris is a, now this one was a 1, 2, 3 part model. So the arm was one part, the weapon arm was another, and then the torso was one complete piece. This guy is similar, it's a 3-part model. Now, looking at these, I would say the Forge World model has got greater depth of detail in general. You can see you've got these deep nooks and crevices, particularly on this angular, crude looking backpack. So that is one that the Forge World miniature definitely scores there. And looking at this model, it does have some good depth definition, but less so than this guy. Now, I guess you might also argue, well, this is like a truer scale, 32mm, so you're not going to get that. Possibly so. On the other hand, I think the Martian Banshee has got better and finer surface detail. So in particular, these vents on the backpack, and then all of these attitude thrusters, and then the fine details around here, I actually think are better than the equivalent surface fine detail on the Forge World model. That's not to say the Forge World model isn't well detailed, because it is. It's just, I think the finer surface details are a bit better on this guy than on the Forge World model. However, the Forge World model has got the depth of detail. Right, so let's move those guys back a little bit. We can't do size comparisons without a Space Marine. So here we've got an Iron Hands Tactical Support Marine armed with a Graviton gun. The bulk gets turned up another notch. Likewise though, they're about the same. Possibly if the Marine was stood directly up straight, he might be a little bit taller. But yeah, so interesting again. Now, as is fashionable at the moment, let's do a size comparison against one of Games Workshop's latest big thing, the Primaris Space Marine. So here we have a Primaris armed with a phased plasma rifle doing his stuff. And he looks really rather big next to the Martian Banshee. Arguably, if you're looking for some troops to represent humans alongside these Primaris models, these guys are really good candidates. They're about the right size differential. And the fact that these are not so heavily built compared to the Marine's massive powered armour actually accentuates the difference that bit better. And go on, let's do one more. We'll just do a larger Citadel miniature, so something Terminator size. Well, just to keep our Mechanicum fans happy, here is a Talax Combat Cyborg. And he looks really big compared to the Banshee. Yeah, he's quite towering compared to that guy. So yeah, a few little size comparisons there just to give you a feel for the size of these miniatures, because when you read that they're 32mm in size, it's a little bit confusing because of the weird and wonderful expressions of miniature size that so many different manufacturers use. I'm not going to talk about the rules a great deal because I'm not that familiar with the current iteration of Warzone Resurrection, but looking at these guys, I can see they still have the traditional role of the original Martian Banshees. So they're armed with the M14 handgun, which has got short range but is rapid firing. Then they've got the Chain Ripper sword, which is a great melee weapon. And if they're armed with a Chain Ripper sword, they have an impenetrable armor value against close combat attacks. So I think it's representing the fact that the Chain Ripper sword is a very good parrying weapon. They're armed with stun grenades. So this allows 2 out of 5 models in the squad to use stun grenades. Successful attacks on enemy models with small bases get a stun effect. Special skills, they have Contempt versus Dark Legion and Mishima. So that makes sense because they always were noted as disliking Mishima. They have Dissension, Gas Masks, Rapid Deployment, Jetpacks, Pure Hatred, Death Shriek, Death from Above, and Jet Boots. So Jetpack is an active skill that gives them a bonus on their movement. Don't land in cover though, because they can get injured. It allows them to leap out of close combat without falling victim to free slashes, so that's handy, so they can hit and fade. Have the passive ability Death from Above. This gives them a benefit if they attack using their jetpack special skill, so it's kind of, yeah, they drop in and make a thunderous close combat attack. Jet Boots. So Jet Boots give them bonuses to jumping tests and also resilience against falling damage. I don't know how that works at all. Then they have the passive ability of Pure Hatred, and that makes them fearless against opponents from Mishima or the Dark Legion. And then the final thing, which is an active skill, Death Shriek. If you burn one resource card, they get a Fear 5 ability until the end of that game turn. And finally, they're armed with Predator Armor, Mark 1, which blast -1 damage. Is that a benefit against that? I'm sorry, I don't know the game well enough to appraise that, but I think tactically these guys seem to be, they're fast moving, they're armed for close assault, and then they got the stun grenade, so they're elite fast moving jump infantry. I think that's probably sums them up quite neatly. So that's everything I'd like to say about these models. I hope you found this interesting. Another look at resin models from a different manufacturer, as I've been enjoying doing, and I hope you're enjoying the journey as well with this. So these guys very much put me in mind of some other models that are going to be released in a few days' time. The moment I saw the pictures for the Primaris Space Marine Reivers, I instantly thought that it was a straight copy of these guys. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. If you want to play with different figures using 40k 8th edition rules, these are great stand-ins for Space Marine Reivers. So that's everything I'd like to say about these. Let me know what you think about these miniatures. Have you had any experience of playing the game? Got any tactical suggestions on them? Have you bought other Mutant Chronicle Warzone Resurrection miniatures from Prodos Games and got any experiences? Like myself, did you play the original Warzone 20 years ago? I'll be very interested to hear. So I'd just like to finish by saying thank you very much for watching. I'll speak to you next time, and goodbye.